Welcome back to Human Design Center. For a practical approach in human design, science of differentiation, the art of living your life according to your unique cosmic imprint, you may start learning about your uniqueness by listening the gates of your chart. Today, we break down the message of Hexagram 21, biting through, the hunter, the huntress, the justified and necessary use of power in overcoming deliberate and persistent interference. Hexagram 21 is part of first trimester ALCYONE, where we accomplish our purpose through mind, initiation, thinking, thoughts. Gate 21 corresponds to God Michael, building the angelic mind. Michael is the core of the mind's programming, the separation and comparison of light or good versus dark or bad. This archetype embodies God's messenger with his sword of truth. Here, mind brings moral laws that determine good and evil, separating matter and exalting spirit. It is the archetype of strength, leadership, protection, and divine order. It is linked to the Archangel Michael, a powerful warrior angel, often seen as the defender of truth and justice. Zodiac Aries. Gate 21 flows within the tribal ego circuitry, which is about offering and receiving support, about touch, timeless. It's not about the past or about the future. Keyword: support, giving, and receiving. Center: ego center, which is about willpower, ego, the material world, your drive and self-worth, contracts and agreements for our material interests. This is where your willpower and motivation are created and processed. In the physical body, the ego center's counterpart is the heart, 21st gate, gallbladder, 1st gate, stomach, 40th gate, and thymus gland, 26th gate. The harmonic gate is number 45, gathering together, being part of the manifested channel, 21 and 45, the channel of money, a design of a materialist. The opposite gate is number 48, the well, gate of depth. Aminoacid, arginine, relevant organ, cardiac muscle. Please notice that on the other side of the channel width have the thyroid in gate 45. Tarot card, associated, major arcana, strength, number 8. Arginine is the same in all of the gates of Michael, 25, 17, 21, 51. The first 4 lines of all 4 gates are identical. They differentiate in the 5th and 6th line of each of these 4 hexagrams. Regarding arginine, we have to observe that there are 6 gates that share the same amino acid. 4 gates in the first trimester, 25, 17, 21, 51, gates of Michael, and also gate 10 and 38 in the 4th trimester, both belonging to Vishnu. So arginine is helping us to accomplish the purpose through mind and initiation, and also through mutation and spirit. When you see arginine in a body graph, you might think of the possibility of, let's say, transferred behavior, meaning a person might have 21st gate activated, but behaving like a 17, or a 10, behaving like 38th gate. We talk about the not self, obviously. Just meditate about this. If we balance the problems of our life regarding our opinions and acceptance capacity, gate 17, or in relation with the behavior of self, gate 10, or regarding control, gate 21, is it possible to get to balance the amino acids in our body? And, as a consequence, can we balance our health? How this balance can be obtained? Maybe in first trimester through thinking, by changing a mindset, and in the 4th trimester, by taking care about our spirit, accepting mutation, paying attention to the state of spirit, behaving in resonance to our real state of spirit, to our real self. L-arginine is an amino acid that helps the body build protein. Your body usually makes all the L-arginine it needs. It is also found in most protein-rich foods, including fish, red meat, poultry, soy, whole grains, beans, and dairy products. Most healthy people do not need to supplement with arginine because it is a component of all protein-containing foods and can be synthesized in the body from glutamine via citrulline. Arginine is made by the body as follows. The epithelial cells of the small intestine produce citrulline, primarily from glutamine and glutamate, which is secreted into the bloodstream, which carries it to the proximal cells of the kidney, which extract the citrulline and convert it to arginine, which is returned to the blood. This means that impairment of kidney function or small intestine can reduce arginine synthesis and thus create a dietary requirement for arginine. For such a person, arginine would become essential. Arginine plays an important role in cell division, wound healing, removing ammonia from the body, immune function, and the release of hormones. It is a precursor for the synthesis of nitric oxide, making it important in the regulation of blood pressure. Arginine is necessary for T cells to function in the body and can lead to their deregulation if depleted. So, besides observing the transferred behavior that I talked about earlier, it will be very interesting if you connect arginine, together with the six gates that are related to it, with the gates which are relevant for glutamine, gates 13 and 30, for T cells, gate 26, and even with the gates relevant for serine, since arginine in 10th gate, the same amino acid as for gate 17, is opposing serine in the 15th gate. Your conclusions will be a pleasant surprise. I do not include my personal opinions on this here, since it's not part of human design. The original knowledge that I want, keep it unaltered. So since we've located the gate on the mandala and on the body graph, and we have a general summary of the essential characteristics of gate 18, you also know the benefits of the amino acid associated with the behavior of this placement. You have the elements to keynote the message of this gate. If you have this gate active in your chart, take your time, compose the key phrase of this gate, and feel how it resonates. Leave a comment, share your insights and understandings. Now let's have a look to the energy of gate 21, a gate of biting through, the hunter, the huntress, the justified and necessary use of power in overcoming deliberate and persistent interference. In human design, gate 21 is known as biting through, and it is associated with themes of control, willpower, and justified use of power to maintain order and sovereignty. It is part of the ego, heart center, and is linked to material and resource management, personal authority, and the ability to take decisive action when necessary. This is a gate that has enormous significance in our lives. It is a gate that often creates a lot of problems because it is the only gate that is designed to be a controlling gate. It can only be a controlling gate because it has the most powerful ego. Gate 21 embodies the archetype of the hunter or huntress, the one who ensures survival by managing resources, protecting what is valuable, and taking control when required. The fact that it is a controlling gate, the fact that it is a powerful ego, is legitimate. In other words, this controlling force is necessary in order to be able to serve and protect the tribe. It is about exerting power in a necessary and justified way. The purpose is not for dominance, but to create order and remove interference that threatens stability of the tribe. This gate expresses a strong will to control resources, situations, or even people that threatens the resources. But this control is most effective when it is aligned with fairness and necessities of tribal security rather than personal ego. The 21 is here to serve the community. It is here to establish for the community what is viable and what works. It is here to make sure that the community has what it needs, the food and shelter that it needs, and the work that it needs. It is here to make sure that there is reward for those efforts, that society not only works but has time for leisure. In other words, it is there to look after the needs of humanity living together on the material plane. It is the channel of materialism. Because the 21 is a control gate, it is also very difficult for people and often extremely difficult for the 21s themselves. The I Ching Hexagram 21, from which this gate gets its meaning, is called biting through. symbolizing the need and the will to take strong, decisive action when faced with obstacles or deliberate and persistent resistance. This is a justified use of power in Gate 21. These are very strong words, you know. The justified and necessary use of power. You will not hear that kind of language in any other gate. In overcoming deliberate and persistent interference. In other words, it is not there to overcome unintentional interference. It is not there to overcome interference that is not non-persistent, but it is there to be in control. It is justified in the use of its power. This is the ego that must strike out. That is why it is an ego that is very uncomfortable for those who have it and those who have to experience it. This power is not about brute force. It is about clear, determined action when faced with injustice, corruption, or persistent interference, all of these affecting the security of community. It is not about occasional interference. When used wisely, Gate 21 ensures that justice and order prevail and that necessary actions are taken to secure survival, fairness, and integrity. Gate 21 takes real action to overcome deliberate and persistent interference. For this purpose, this gate's energy responds to obstacles with necessary force, ensuring that interference does not derail progress. Of course, in this gate, it is not about aggression or unnecessary aggression. Rather, it is about taking responsibility and using power appropriately to clear the way for stability and growth. When in balance, individuals with this gate protect their tribe, their resources, and their vision, ensuring that external disruptions do not lead to chaos. So, we have here some inherent values that are relevant for this gate only. It's about the drive to manage and direct resources effectively, to exert control and sovereignty. A 21st gate has always the ability to make tough decisions and enforce necessary actions from its own willpower and authority. In Gate 21, which is entitled to even show its justified power, here, power and control must be used when they serve the greater good and ensures fairness. People with Gate 21 address obstacles decisively when these obstacles threaten order, and in this way they overcome interference. In relationships, individuals with this gate may feel a strong need to have control over their environment or decisions. In work, they often thrive in positions of leadership, management, or financial control, ensuring that everything is well regulated and secure. Gate 21 is about the power to take decisive action when necessary, ensuring that interference is overcome and that resources, people, and situations are managed effectively. Like a hunter-huntress, those with this gate must balance control with wisdom, using their power in ways that serve both personal and communal well-being. The way in which a 21 operates has to do with the nature of their design. An undefined heart center with the 21 is very different from a defined one. A 21 with a defined heart center is very different as a generator, a manifester, or a projector. In other words, there are a lot of complexities in how the gate actually can operate. If you have the 21 and you are a projector, people in your life have to recognize that you have to be in control. Otherwise, you are not meeting the right people. If you are a generator with the 21, you can only take control when somebody asks you and you respond to it. If you are 21 that is a manifester, you have to ask their permission before you control them. If you are 21 in an undefined heart center, all you can do is wait to be offered control, because the moment that you claim control, you will break your heart. If the heart center is undefined, the energy of Gate 21 may feel inconsistent, a real struggle between wanting control and feeling unsure about asserting power, or, in a healthy expression, it will be a balance between being in control more or less, based on your own criteria and priorities. Or, in an undefined center, you will be mad about controlling amplifying the energy of this gate. The best way to balance this energy, in an undefined ego center, is to be offered control, by life itself or by others. Individuals with Gate 21 in a defined heart center often have strong willpower and a natural inclination to take control in resources or survival matters. Here is the great dilemma of the 21, as Rauruhu explains it. I quote, "The dilemma is written in the genetic continuity of the chart. The 21 in an undefined heart center is dependent on the other person as to whether they can bring out their control or not, and they may have to ask. When it is defined to the throat, it is a different process, but always, the dilemma for the 21 is to find a way to get the respect so that they are not interfered with. They cannot get that until they learn how to control things. If you have a child with the 21, give them responsibilities. Give them things that they control, their schedule or whatever, so they learn what it is to be in control and they get respect for their ability to be in control of things. Remember that this gate is where the heart sits. Everybody who has the 21 who is not allowed to exercise their power to be in control, those people in their lives who do not allow that are killing them, literally. This is a deeply misunderstood hexagram. The 21 has a birthright to be in control. It has a justified and proper right to be in control. Depending on the design, the control will be allowed and will come out in different ways. The moment it is there, the 21 has to be trusted and allowed to do its job of serving the community. This is an ego that truly will serve the community as long as it is recognized in its power. End of quote. I hope I've piqued your curiosity to climb the 6 lines ladder of Gate 21. It's a process that will bring clarity to you in relation to nuances of the content and expression of the 21st gate. At the end, we will touch upon the crosses of incarnation, where Gate 21st plays its role for our conscious sun and become part of the purpose. Let's see the 6 stages of development of this energy and possible dualism in its manifestation. Gate 21, Line 1, Warning, the use of force as a last resort. In human design, the first line of any gate represents its foundational energy, how it establishes security, explores its nature, and interacts with the world. For Gate 21, Biting Through, the Hunter, Huntress, the first line carries the theme of warning, the use of force as a last resort. Unfolding this line, it's about cautious control and justified power. This line does not seek conflict or dominance outright, but instead observes, assesses, and warns before acting. It represents the wisdom that true power is best exercised with restraint, only using force when absolutely necessary. Like a hunter waiting for the right moment, this energy understands that action taken too soon or too aggressively can create unnecessary resistance. These people always try diplomacy before action. Those with Gate 21.1 prefer to negotiate, warn, and attempt peaceful resolution first. If interference or injustice, the imbalances continue, they will assert control decisively but fairly. This reflects a mature and responsible approach to power, avoiding unnecessary struggle but standing firm when needed. Gate 21 embodies survival, instinct, and resource management. Gate 21 is deeply connected to material survival and sovereignty, dealing with control over resources, finances, or leadership. The first line ensures that before force is used, all reasonable measures are considered, such as diplomacy, negotiation, or strategic planning. However, if the situation threatens stability or survival of community, action will be taken swiftly and effectively. A leader with Gate 21.1 will not immediately impose control, but will set clear warnings and boundaries first. If rules are broken repeatedly, they will enforce them decisively. In relationships, they may seek harmony first, but if disrespected or taken advantage of, they will assert their independence and enforce boundaries. In work and money, this energy values financial and material security. It will warn before taking control of resources, but won't hesitate to act if security is threatened. Anyway, the lesson is that power must be used wisely. Patience and strategy come first. warnings, negotiations, and attempts at peaceful resolution. Force is a last resort, but when it is needed, it must be applied with clarity, purpose, and confidence. This energy embodies the hunter's precision, waiting for the right moment to strike, ensuring that action is always justified, necessary, and effective. Talking about the warning theme of this gate, remember that it is the basis of the 21 and its control. Don't interfere, attention, the use of force as a last resort. In other words, in the use of power to be in control, the worst thing is to start with force first. You can observe and learn about this in teachers' world. In public teaching institutions, there are always those teachers who can never, ever control their students. They will threaten them. When that does not work, they will use force, and the moment you use force, you cannot go any further. The moment that you have a teacher that would strap and punish the student, this one knows that they took those teachers to their limitation. What else could they do? Warning. The use of force as a last resort. It does not say that you don't use force. If you keep on saying, hey, look, this is what you have to do, and people still do not listen, only then you can use force. Mars exalted. The fierceness to be respected without recourse to action. The willpower and ego to ensure respect. This is an overview line. It takes a long time to get that respect. You don't have it right away. This is a deeply painful gate to have if you are a child. You are here to be in control, but you are being dictated by your parents, your school, by your siblings, by friends. What usually happens is that these people live with nothing but tension. The cross of tension is rooted in the polarity between the 21 and the 48. The 21st gate can bring an enormous tension, which becomes a strain on the heart, simply because these people are not allowed to be in control. In human design, Mars represents raw energy, drive, and assertion, often linked to how we take action and enforce our will. When Mars is exalted in 21, line 1, it amplifies the intensity of personal power, will, and ego, creating an energy that commands respect without needing to use force. It's about fierce presence and natural authority. Individuals with this placement radiate strength and have a presence that naturally demands respect. They don't need to constantly prove themselves or resort to aggression. Their inner confidence and willpower are enough to establish dominance. This is the energy of silent authority, a leader who is respected simply because others sense their power. Mars brings willpower and ego strength. The heart, ego, center governs self-worth, courage, material control, and with the Mars exalted here, there is an unshakable sense of personal value. These individuals know their worth and expect others to acknowledge it without challenge. They have a strong inner drive to lead and protect, particularly in matters of survival, business, and material resources. This exaltation has to be in control without conflict. This placement prefers to establish control through sheer presence rather than through direct confrontation. Sometimes their warnings and boundaries are enough. Others sense that if crossed, there will be consequences, but action is rarely needed. Think of a strong ruler, alpha leader, or skilled negotiator who can keep order with just a glance or a few words. People with this exaltation commands authority in business, family, or leadership roles without needing to assert dominance aggressively. People naturally defer to them because of their strong willpower and self-assured presence. In their social they sets firm but fair boundaries, making it clear what is acceptable and what isn't. One does not seek conflict, but others instinctively know not to push too far. Mars exalted in this line has strong instincts for wealth, survival, and resource management, can hold power over financial or business matters without needing to constantly enforce it. What is clear in this placement is that control is most effective when others recognize your strength before you even need to assert it. This is the warrior who rarely needs to fight, because their reputation and energy already ensure victory. The moon in detriment, an inherent peacefulness that all too often turns a necessary warning into a plea. In the White Book, a lack of willpower that is forced to ask for respect. These are the 21s who say, "Look, please let me be in control. I know what I am doing. Please stop interfering. Please." That is not a very powerful way of dealing with things. In that moment, the 21 is asking for the other not to interfere, when in fact, they are here to insist that there is no interference. Now, the moon in astrology represents emotions, needs, and subconscious drives. When it is in detriment, it struggles to express its natural qualities. This often leads to emotional turbulence, insecurity, or a difficulty in asserting oneself effectively. Let's understand the key phrase of this lunar detriment. 1. An inherent peacefulness that all too often turns a necessary warning into a plea. I think, instead of asserting control with authority, which Gate 21 typically desires, the person may approach situations in a more passive or hesitant manner. They may struggle to demand what they need and instead end up asking or pleading, even when their warning or control is justified. The need for control remains, but the will to enforce it strongly is weakened. 2. A lack of willpower that is forced to ask for respect. The will center, ego, plays a key role in this gate. With the moon in detriment, the person may lack the inner strength or confidence to demand respect directly. Instead of commanding authority, they may find themselves requesting it, sometimes from a position of emotional need rather than strength. There is a practical meaning to conclude from this breakdown, isn't it? I think someone with Gate 21, line 1 with moon in detriment, may feel the urge to control situations but struggle to assert themselves effectively. They might find themselves asking rather than demanding respect, which can lead to frustration or feelings of powerlessness. The key challenge is learning to stand firm in authority without falling into a pattern of seeking validation or pleading for acknowledgement. Gate 21, line 2, might is right. The legitimacy of action in response to flagrant and persistent interference. In human design, Gate 21, the Huntress, biting through, is about control, willpower, and managing resources. Line 2 introduces the principle of might is right, emphasizing the legitimacy of power when used in response to persistent interference. Might is right is about a justified use of power. This line carries the energy of asserting control when provoked, but only when interference is ongoing and flagrant. It is not about reckless domination. Instead, it emphasizes legitimacy in the use of force to restore order when fairness is repeatedly violated. Power is justified when it is necessary to protect stability, resources, or sovereignty. This line is also about strength in response to threats. Unlike line 1, which warns before acting, line 2 does not hesitate to take action once boundaries are crossed repeatedly. If interference persists, this energy responds swiftly, decisively, and with full force. This is not about unnecessary aggression, but rather knowing when to stand firm and fight for what is right. Second line is aware of the legitimacy of its own action, because might is right only when it is justified. The individual with this line should not abuse their power, but rather use it when necessary to correct injustice. This is the leader or warrior who steps up when rules are broken and ensures that discipline is enforced. When aligned with integrity, this energy protects the tribe, community, business, or family from external threats. We expect these people to act with authority and decisiveness when control is necessary. People may either respect them for their strength or fear them for their ability to enforce rules. In their life, second-line people of Gate 21 do not tolerate ongoing disrespect or manipulation. Once a boundary is crossed too many times, they act swiftly and decisively. They will protect loved ones. This is the energy of the warrior leader, not one who seeks conflict, but one who will act without hesitation when interference becomes too great. Ra Uru Hu about this line said that, To be in control means that you don't deal with any kind of interference because it will show that you are not really in control. This is the ego, after all. You release that control when you are constantly being interfered with. That is the moment that you have to stop the interference. Think about the second line, which does not know any of that. It does not even realize that it is being in control. Because it does not have that realization, lower trigram, not transpersonal, it is simply in its own thing, and then somebody comes along and because they can look in the window, they say, these people are being in control of that. I will interfere with that. Boy, do they get a surprise. End of quote. This line has its own exaltation. When Mars is here, powerful and extreme reaction. Here, the severest action will be the most successful. The legitimate rejection of interference on the material plane. Here, the severest action will be the most successful. You see somebody sitting at a desk and they are doing something. They are in control of what they are doing, and somebody comes up to them and says, "You really shouldn't." The legitimate rejection of interference on the material plane. This can be very shocking to people. Mars exalted is intense, forceful, and uncompromising, adding these qualities to taking justified action when faced with persistent interference, which is the expression of this second line. So, powerful and extreme reaction equals no holding back. When interference reaches a breaking point, this energy does not hesitate. It reacts with full force. Unlike line 1, which warns before acting, line 2, Mars exalted, reacts swiftly and decisively to shut down threats. The response is not subtle. It is direct, strong, and final. The severest action will be the most successful. That means the extreme measures work. Half measures won't bring success. This placement indicates that only the most forceful action will effectively remove the problem. It is about making a statement, ensuring that interference is completely eradicated so it does not return. This is the general who wins the war with overwhelming strength rather than prolonged battles. The legitimate rejection of interference on the material plane. This is about enforcing boundaries, especially in business, finances, and survival matters. If someone tries to take control, steal resources, or disrupt stability of the tribe, Mars exalted in Gate 21-2 ensures they are decisively removed. No room for compromise. When interference threatens security, action is taken immediately and effectively. Be aware that in a relationship with second-line Mars exalted person, he or she will not tolerate ongoing disrespect. If pushed too far, they will cut ties completely. They protect the loved ones fiercely and removes toxic influences without hesitation. If the control of resources is threatened by competition, they eliminate competition ruthlessly, ensuring survival or financial stability is at stake. This exaltation is the energy of the warrior king, the fierce protector, and the ruthless strategist. They do not seek unnecessary conflict, but when action is needed, it is absolute. Neptune in detriment. It did not operate in our time, but will try to analyze the line. A tendency to regret severity, no matter how legitimate. The ego is uncomfortable with severity. Remember that we do not know people born with this placement in our time. Neptune in detriment brings a deep emotional or psychological discomfort with the severity of one's own actions, even when they were justified. When we analyze a tendency to regret severity, it's like a second guessing for strong actions. Unlike Mars exalted in this line, which acts decisively and without regret, Neptune in detriment might introduce uncertainty, doubt, and emotional conflict after action has been taken. This placement suggests that even if a firm response was necessary and legitimate, there is a tendency to look back and question whether it was too harsh. The person may struggle with guilt, self-doubt, or remorse, wondering if they could have handled the situation differently. The ego uncomfortable with severity. This looks like a battle between power and compassion. The ego, heart center, is about willpower, self-worth, and asserting control, but with Neptune in detriment, there is a conflict between enforcing boundaries and maintaining emotional comfort. The person may hesitate before taking strong action or feel emotionally uneasy afterward, even if their power was necessary. This creates an inner struggle between doing what must be done versus dealing with the emotional aftermath. Unlike the Mars exalted version of this line, which embraces power and control, Neptune in detriment may create a tendency to soften or retreat from strong action. This can manifest as apologizing after enforcing necessary boundaries, feeling like one was too harsh, or trying to repair relationships even when the other party was clearly in the wrong. There is a spiritual lesson here, learning to accept that sometimes severity is necessary and that guilt should not undermine legitimate power. This detriment can be seen as indecisive or hesitant when dealing with authority. It struggles with being too nice or too harsh. This is the energy of the reluctant warrior, one who enforces justice but struggles with the weight of their actions. Gate 21, line 3, powerlessness, where the just are condemned to a futile confrontation with superior forces. In human design, Gate 21, biting through, the hunter or huntress, is about control, willpower, and the management of material resources. Line 3 introduces the theme of struggle against greater forces, where despite the best intentions, one may find themselves unable to enforce control or succeed in their pursuit of justice. Powerlessness, it sounds like a struggle against overwhelming odds. Remember that this is about the possibility of being powerless. The assumption that they are powerless is false. Unlike previous lines where power is effectively asserted, line 3 experiences resistance from forces too great to overcome. This can manifest as a person trying to enforce fairness, but being blocked by authority or an unfair system. Despite being in the right, they may find themselves outmatched, ignored, or overpowered. The just are condemned. This is morality versus reality. This energy often wants to fight for what is right, but real-world limitations can prevent justice from being served. The individual may stand up for principles only to face setbacks, punishment, or an inability to change the outcome. It can feel like banging one's head against a wall, knowing what needs to be done, but being blocked at every turn. And the last part to break down, futile confrontation with superior forces. That's the moment when control slips away. It means that it struggles with control, authority, and influence, often facing situations where they are simply not in charge. If they attempt to assert power, they may face backlash or overwhelming opposition. The obvious here is to recognize when to let go, avoid unnecessary battles, and find smarter ways to navigate power structures. In real life, it may be about a leader that tries to enforce fairness, but is blocked by corrupt leadership or bureaucracy. They might lose control over resources, businesses, or financial matters despite efforts to hold on. If you think of relationships or friends, they try to set boundaries, but they are overruled or ignored. They feel dominated in relationships or unable to stand up for themselves effectively. In relation to control of resource, they may struggle with financial control or lose battles over material possessions. They can face unexpected losses due to greater economic forces or competitors with more power. Sometimes, the best strategy is to retreat, regroup, and find another path. Recognize when power structures are too strong to fight directly and adapt instead. This is the energy of the warrior facing an unbeatable army. Bravery is present, but without the right strategy, it can lead to frustration, loss, and exhaustion. The key is to know when to surrender control and find new ways to navigate power. After all, you are a third line. Trial and error is your nature is your strength. If you break down what the sentence above the line is actually saying, it says that the just are condemned to a futile confrontation with superior forces, not with inferior forces. Ra Uruhu has a great advice for us. In relation to this third line, I quote, "When somebody has the 21.3, they can never ever work for somebody else. It is hard for 21s to work for anybody else anyway. And I always tell 21s the same thing. You have to be your own boss. And if that means that you have to work in a corporation, then you have a separate contract which states that you are an outsider that is contracted in so you can be in control of your material life and not be dependent." What happens to these people in their trial and error process is that, for example, they try to get into a corporation and they get in at a lower level. These 21.3s go through hell with that because every step and layer above them, every layer of management and control that is above them, is absolutely infuriating to them because they can't win. They don't have the juice. They can't win. They are powerless. The moment that you give a 21.3 a boss, they are powerless. This leads to a lot of difficulties. End of quote. The Neptunian field is not at work. The advantage is because this exalted is defeat as a survivable humiliation, often acceptable through the abuse of drugs and alcohol. Unless one follows one's own material path, the breaking of the ego by superiors. This is not active yet, but for the future, it is useful to break down this sentence on defeat as a survivable humiliation, meaning it is advisable learning to cope with loss. We already know that gate 21.3 already struggles against superior forces, but this line emphasizes the experience of defeat, framing it as something that can be endured. Unlike Jupiter in detriment, which completely withdraws, Neptune's exaltation brings a level of acceptance, even if it might be painful. There is an emotional and psychological impact, a bruised ego, feelings of powerlessness, or being humbled by circumstances beyond control. 2. Often acceptable through the abuse of drugs and alcohol. Is this numbing the pain of powerlessness? Since Neptune rules illusions, escapism, and altered states of consciousness, this is why this line links defeat with self-medicating behaviors. When faced with repeated losses or the inability to control their environment, individuals with this placement may turn to alcohol, drugs, or other forms of escapism. This doesn't mean everyone with this line will struggle with substance abuse, but there is a risk of avoiding reality rather than confronting it. 3. Unless one follows one's own material path, the breaking of the ego by superiors. That is the key to avoiding defeat. The only way to avoid total humiliation is to carve one's own path and not depending on external authorities for validation, power, or security. If one tries to fit into someone else's system or hierarchy, they risk being dominated, humiliated, or broken down by those in higher positions. Independence is crucial. This energy must learn to define success on their own terms, rather than submitting to an external power structure that does not serve them. Well, if self-determined, they find their own way to success rather than competing in traditional power struggles. If forced to conform, they may experience humiliation, powerlessness, and escapism. If they rely on external approval in their relationships, they may experience rejection or humiliation by those in control. If they stand firm in their values, they can avoid dependency on others for self-worth. Since any energy is either this or that, I think that this is the energy of someone who can either numb their pain or transform their setbacks into personal growth, at least when they are conscious about how Neptune operates in this placement. What is active for this line 3 is the detriment, total withdrawal, a lack of will for the material path in order to protect the ego. Think about what that means in our society. Jupiter is in detriment here. Line 3 is about struggling against superior forces, and when Jupiter is in detriment, the response is not to fight, but to completely withdraw in order to protect one's sense of self-worth. Total withdrawal happens by choosing to step away. Instead of engaging in a losing battle, this energy chooses to remove itself entirely. The person may refuse to compete in material pursuits, business, money, leadership, because they see it as futile or too difficult. This is not about failure, but about opting out, deciding that the fight for control or power is not worth the personal cost. A lack of will for the material path equals to rejecting the game. Gate 21 is naturally about controlling material resources, but with Jupiter in detriment, there is a resistance to engaging in that struggle. The person may feel disconnected from financial success, leadership, or material ambition, seeing them as burdens rather than goals. There can be a spiritual or philosophical withdrawal, where material pursuits feel meaningless, and the individual prefers to focus on inner values rather than external power. And the last part of the sentence, in order to protect the ego, is about avoiding defeat or disappointment. The key here is self-preservation. Withdrawing from the fight is a way to avoid potential failure, rejection, or the pain of losing control. There may be a fear of competition or a sense that engaging in material struggles would damage one's self-worth. This can lead to self-sabotage, avoiding opportunities simply to prevent possible loss. In real life, these persons avoid taking on leadership roles because they don't want the pressure or risk. They refuse to engage in power struggles, even when they have the potential to win, or withdraw from conflict or boundary setting, preferring to avoid confrontation altogether. In relation to work or career, to your job, there are struggles with financial ambition, preferring to live simply or avoid money-related stress. You may reject traditional success paths, corporate careers, wealth building, to protect your sense of self. Concretely, you don't like to work. This placement of Jupiter is the energy of the monk who chooses inner peace over material power, but also of the person who may avoid ambition out of fear of failure. The challenge is to differentiate between wise surrender and self-limiting avoidance, regarding withdrawal and their approach to the material plane. This line does not mean that the 21.3 has to withdraw just like that, anytime. It's a nuance that has to be observed. Do you remember the overview of the line, which says that the futile confrontation is only with superior forces? There is no need to withdraw if they are not dealing with superior forces. The moment they go out and try to deal with superior forces, automatically all 21.3s will withdraw. They will have a very hard time on the material plane. There is an advantage for people carrying this line, but only if they understand that if they give up trying to work for somebody, again, that takes ego courage, then that withdrawal is not active for them. It will only be active if they meet a superior force, because then they will be in a futile position. Ra Uru Hu clearly said about this line that these are people that do not want to work, do not want to leave school. These are people that do not want to have a boss, that want to reject the whole material plane because in their life, it is impossible to have somebody controlling them and telling them what to do. So, when you meet a 21.3 and you are dealing with this energy, you must tell them that there is only one thing that can help them. Never, ever have a boss. Again, the dilemma of being an ego child. Ego children, like emotional children, have enormous problems in their early years because they have to deal with authority. Particularly, 21 children constantly have to deal with authority. A 21.3 child can be made to feel like they have no power at all, and that futility can be a deep pain in their life, and they will just withdraw. They will just hide so that they do not have to listen to somebody controlling them. It is very important to recognize that 21 children have to be treated with respect. They have to. They have to be given their opportunity to show that they are capable of being in control even when they are very young. However you work that out, because otherwise this powerlessness is conditioning them from the very start, and they never get to flower at all. So many 21.3s that I meet are so angry at the world, so uncomfortable with having been directed all of their lives. For them, it is so easy. Do not have a boss. Do not have a boss in your relationships. Do not have a boss at work. Do not have a superior force in your life unless you are a masochist and you love to be powerless. By the way, the punks came with this genetic theme. End of quote. This part of the key sentence, to establish a proper response, is about manifestation. Since the fourth line is able to see 45, since we are in the upper trigram, and in this particularly in the 21st gate, we deal with the capacity to bring control to the transpersonal experience. The fourth and fifth lines are extremely well equipped in the 21 to be able to control what they have to control, which is manifestation. Everything about the tribe is desperate to get to the throat. For the tribe, there is only one way. The 21 has to reach 45. The throat itself is dependent on having that ego do the work, do the serving. The only way the throat gets that is by protecting the 21. The 21s seek out their protectors because they need to find access to manifestation, and that is their gift. Their gift is that they have the ability to transpersonally see how to get things manifested. The 21.4s and the 21.5s make very powerful leaders. You can see them in action as good presidents of companies. The fourth line isn't called strategy for nothing. Talking about strategy, we can conclude that this fourth line strategy is to avoid unnecessary conflict. They only asserts control when it is truly advantageous. Also, you may have seen, maybe in real life, that they plan ahead and never make impulsive decisions regarding power, money, or leadership. It's their ability to know when to act and when to wait, ensuring that they always maintain the upper hand. In their social circle, in their relationships, they do not react emotionally to opposition. They assess situations logically before making a move, making use of diplomacy and influence to gain control rather than jumping to direct confrontation. If you work in a company that has a CEO or a president with this 21.4 imprint, you may observe that these people understand financial and strategic planning and do not waste energy on unprofitable or risky ventures. The resources of the business community are managed wisely, ensuring long-term stability and control. If you have this line in your chart and you cannot find in your real life these expressions of 21.4, maybe you need to recognize you might need these lessons for a healthy expression of gate 21.4. Power is best used with strategy. Observe first, act second. Not every battle must be fought directly. Sometimes, patience and careful planning lead to victory. True leadership is about making the right move at the right time, not just asserting control for the sake of dominance. After all, this is the energy of the wise ruler, the skilled negotiator, and the strategist who always stays one step ahead. Take advantage of this gift. Gate 21. Line 4, Jupiter exalted, success in action through clarity. The ego to succeed on the material plane and the instinct to use willpower effectively in response to conditions. We have Jupiter exalted in this line as success in action through clarity, the ego to succeed on the material plane, and the instinct to use willpower effectively in response to conditions. Jupiter is the planet of expansion, abundance, and wisdom. When exalted, it enhances success, luck, and positive influence, particularly in material or leadership-related areas. This line describes a specific aspect of how control and power function in relation to material success, particularly under the influence of Jupiter in exaltation. Interpreting the phrase, we unlock the meaning of Jupiter exalted and recognize its true value in our imprinting. So, success and action through clarity, meaning a clear understanding of circumstances. 1. This means control is exerted as the result of investigation. It is simply about looking at things and seeing how they can be done. This is the strategy as a premise or tool for control, finally ensuring success. But remember that how things can be done by a fourth line is a one-tracked process. That means strategy is everything. These are very strategic people, and they are often perceived as being manipulative because they know how to control. Because they are in control positions, people rarely accuse them of that because they tend to be dependent on their manipulation to have what they need in this life, to have resources and the control of resources for the security of the tribe. 2. This suggests that clear vision and decisive action oriented to material and leadership success. People with this placement understand what needs to be done and act accordingly, making them natural decision makers. Their success comes from their ability to see the right path and act on it efficiently. Any kind of success must be sustainable for this exalted line. The other part is the ego to succeed on the material plane and the instinct to use willpower effectively in response to conditions. Gate 21 is an ego-driven gate connected to the will center. And here, Jupiter's exaltation strengthens the ability to succeed in material and resource-related matters. It's a willpower directed especially in managing material resources, money, possessions, power structures. There is a natural instinct to know when and how to use control or authority, adapting to circumstances rather than forcing situations. They make sure that success is the result of natural authority rather than forceful domination. This means using power wisely rather than just dominating for the sake of control. It's about effective leadership that balances willpower with timing and awareness. They are really attuned to external circumstances as part of their strategy. Practically speaking, if you have 21.4 people around you, you see them naturally taking charge and influencing others effectively, often in business or financial matters. They are oriented to material success, and for this purpose, they have a keen sense of opportunity and the ability to align their actions with what brings material or financial gain. What is interesting is that, unlike the more forceful aspects of Gate 21, this placement knows when to push and when to hold back, ensuring success without unnecessary conflict. They embody those forceful aspects, but they have their unique way of managing and controlling these aspects. Earth in detriment. A tendency, when in the right, to misjudge the power of one's opponents. The drive when in the right to follow one's ego rather than one's instincts. This is always a dilemma for the ego. Just because it is right does not mean that it's going to work. Here in the fourth line, just because you have the right strategy does not mean that it is going to work. There are a lot of businesses everywhere in the world that design strategies every year of how they will make millions. Yes, strategies are nice, but they do not always work. Gate 21, line 4. In detriment, Earth reveals a challenge in the dynamic of control, willpower, and material success. While the exalted version, Jupiter, brings clarity and the strategic use of willpower, brings this gift of being able to see where you use your control. But the detriment, Earth, highlights potential pitfalls related to ego, misjudgment, and overconfidence. Breaking it down. 1. A tendency, when in the right, to misjudge the power of one's opponents. This suggests that even when someone is on the right path or has a justified position, they may underestimate the strength, influence, or strategy of others, of the opposing forces. The challenge here is overconfidence, believing one has control or dominance when in reality, the situation may require a more cautious or calculated approach. The opposing forces are forces which interfere. In this line, it does not matter whether they are inferior or superior. Only the third line is particularly about superior forces. The third line is the pathway that leads to wisdom. For any 21, the third line is really saying, look, if you really understand that you do not have to be powerless, you become the superior force. That is where the real wisdom of the 21 lies, when it recognizes that it is the superior force. The moment a 21 recognizes this, it does not have to claim it anymore. It will get the natural respect that is due because it does recognize that it is the superior force. 2. The drive when in the right. to follow one's ego rather than one's instincts. This is the ego saying, "This is my strategy. I made it up and I will not give it up. It will work." Even though you know that it will crash, instead of acting from awareness and adaptability, the person might be driven by personal will and pride, making decisions based on ego rather than intuition or strategic timing. This can lead to power struggles, unnecessary conflicts, or financial missteps because decisions are made based on personal validation rather than an accurate assessment of reality. Since there is a choice between ego and instinct, and the rise of misjudgment of opposing forces, this placement comes with some warnings against blind confidence, which is about assuming control without fully understanding the opposition or external circumstances. Also, there may be stubbornness or an urge to push forward at all costs, even when the wiser choice would be to step back or reassess. When there is a healthy expression of this detriment, a certain lesson in humility and discernment will be learned, such as recognizing when control is not actually in one's hands. For someone with this influence, it is important to assess when ego is leading the way and to refine their instincts for power and control. This way, they ensure success that is sustainable rather than forced. Gate 21, line 5, objectivity. This is a classic fifth line, and even more so because of the impact of not having Pluto being active. So there is no detriment in this particular line in our time. All fifth lines get projected on from outside. They get projected on because that projection is the desire, the need of the totality to have that kind of a role displayed out of that hexagram. So, society as a whole is looking to the 21.5 and saying they should be in control, projecting on them that they should be in control. It is projected on them, both positively and negatively, that they should be in control. If someone projects on you that you are in control, and you really take this opportunity and take control, and the result is positive, then control is given to you, and you get the respect that is due. That's the field of projection in this line. We have here an overview line. The use of force must be based on impartiality and not emotionally motivated. This line is about the correct use of control, power, and willpower in a way that is fair, strategic, and not driven by emotions. It is also what it is projected on them. The use of force must be based on impartiality and not emotionally motivated. 1. This means that control and authority should be exercised logically and objectively, rather than being driven by personal emotions, ego, or reactions. The use of force must be based on impartiality and not emotionally motivated. When you read a line that says it must be impartial and not based on emotions, you know that in the learning process it is very much partial and very much emotional until it finally learns how to use power properly. Remember, it is an ongoing process. 2. If power is used emotionally, out of anger, fear, pride, or attachment, or exerted out of emotionalized ego or feelings, it can lead to poor judgment, conflict, and instability. If you have a very powerful ego, and it is the only motor in your design, you will manifest out of the power of the ego. But you should know about the ego is its inherent immaturity. The ego takes a very long time to grow up because the rest of what it meets in the world is trying to reduce its power rather than to nurture it. The whole thing about the nature of this fifth line is that objectivity is what the totality wants from its controllers. They want its controllers to be impartial and not to use the power emotionally. Society doesn't want them to be motivated by relationships or because they owe somebody something. They want to make sure that it is not emotional. Just because somebody does not like you for what you did does not mean that they will throw you out when, in fact, you may be of value and may be doing your work. We want our controlling agents to be impartial and non-emotional. 3. Instead, the correct approach is detached decision-making, ensuring that actions are based on fairness and what is truly necessary, not personal feelings. As a practical role of line 5, They are usually seen as the leader, guide, or practical problem solver. It has the potential to wield power effectively, but it must do so with wisdom and neutrality to avoid backlash or misuse of authority. This line is about finding balance, knowing when to act with strength, but also ensuring that decisions are fair, non-emotional, and not reactionary. Power should be applied fairly, without bias or personal emotion. Effective leadership requires detachment, seeing things as they truly are. Emotional reactions can lead to mistakes, while objectivity ensures success. As a learning curve, the fifth line will be both partially prejudiced and emotional, and it learns by the price it pays. The moment that it is not objective in its control, it will create all kinds of resistance from other forces. I will not let you control me because you do not control fairly. You don't control Mary as much as you control me. They lose the respect that way, and in order for them to gain that back, it is an objective process that has to be at work. Here, you have Jupiter exalted, a principled and legal character that ensures objectivity, the balanced ego whose willpower is applied objectively. This placement represents true leadership in control, power, and resource management, where authority is exercised with principles, fairness, and objectivity rather than ego-driven motives. The first sentence, a principled and legal character that ensures objectivity. Those principles have to come by. One has to learn how to use power, because power does not belong to us. It is something you have to learn to work with, to learn how to use. Jupiter in exaltation here brings a sense of justice, ethics, and fairness to power and control. There is an ability to stay neutral and fair when making decisions, ensuring that actions are not based on personal biases, but on what is right and just. This placement suggests a natural leader or authority figure who understands how to apply rules, principles, and structure in a way that benefits the collective rather than just serving personal interests. The second sentence, the balanced ego whose willpower is applied objectively. Unlike other expressions of Gate 21 that might struggle with control issues, power struggles, or emotional decision-making, this placement balances personal willpower with fairness. The person can assert control effectively without being overly forceful or manipulative. They know when and how to apply their will in a way that is rational, thoughtful, and beneficial to the greater good rather than just serving personal gain. With this placement, make sure that you implement ethical and fair leadership, power to be applied with wisdom, not dominance. Decisions should be made with clarity and neutrality, ensuring that the right actions are taken. Control must not be driven by emotions, but by principles and justice. The same for your ego. This is a powerful placement for leadership, governance, business, or any role where control over resources and decision is necessary. The balanced ego, it says in the overview line, but it will start off imbalanced, and it will take a while until it will be balanced. You have to understand that. Then, whose willpower is applied objectively? We really need these people in the world as our controlling agents. The whole world is controlled by 21s. That is part of the global vibration. That is part of the role of the 21. Let's do our best to nurture the 21.5s. If you project onto the 21.5 child that it has to be in control, make sure that you teach that child the importance of being impartial and non-emotional in its control, in its use of power, because ultimately, these are the beings that are going to apply those controls to the rest of the world. Ra Uruhu has a very deep assertion regarding the impact of this line in the world. I quote, "When you think about it, all the 10th gates together condition our behavior in the world. All the second gates together condition our direction in the world. All the 21st gates condition whether or not our societies and cultures are going to operate properly. It is essential for us that we learn to recognize these qualities in our children and to see that 21 children must be nurtured so that they end up being productive controlling agents rather than embittered ones, rather than being forced to withdraw, their egos shattered, feeling inferior, and not wanting to be involved in controlling. If all the 21s give up being in control, we are going to have what the 6th line predicts, nothing but chaos. End of quote. Gate 21, line 5, Pluto and detriment. This placement did not operate in our time, and not very soon also. It will take a lot years for Pluto to reach gate 21 in Aries, since it is in Aquarius right now. Anyway, this line is, the drive for elimination is so powerful that objectivity is related purely to cause and not effect. The ego whose willpower is applied subjectively. It introduces a deep, intense drive for control, but with a potential blind spot, a focus on the cause rather than the consequences of one's actions. Pluto's transformative energy can make this expression more extreme, forceful, or subjective compared to objectivity of Jupiter's exaltation. The first part, the drive for elimination is so powerful that objectivity is related purely to cause and not effect. There is an intense need to take control, restructure, or remove what is seen as unnecessary or inefficient. However, the focus is so strongly on the mission or justification, the cause, that the potential fallout or impact, the effect, may be overlooked. This can result in decisive but ruthless actions, where control is exerted without fully considering the long-term consequences. The second part, the ego whose willpower is applied subjectively. Well, instead of neutral, fair decision-making, willpower is driven by personal perspective, emotions, or unconscious biases. The person may believe they are acting justly, but without realizing it, their decisions could be shaped by hidden motives, fears, or a deep desire for control. This could manifest as power struggles, intense leadership, or controlling behavior, especially when facing resistance. What it can be easily understood is that control can become excessive. It may feel necessary, but the full consequences aren't always considered. Decisions are influenced by personal perception, not always by an objective view of reality. Transformation and elimination are powerful themes, but must be handled carefully to avoid unnecessary destruction or conflict. Pay attention to being ruled by the need for transformation at all costs. Gate 21, line 6, chaos, where ineffective action leads to disorder. This line highlights the potential consequences of ineffective control, where a failure to apply power properly leads to disorder, instability, and confusion. Unlike the more strategic and objective expressions of power seen in earlier lines, line 6 is at the top of the hexagram, often representing an overview, transition, or even detachment from the theme of control itself. This sentence, where ineffective action leads to disorder, is relevant for the power and control that are not applied correctly, efficiently, or with wisdom. The result is chaos rather than stability. It's about control that is mismanaged, poorly timed, or forced can create unnecessary resistance, rebellion, or breakdowns in structure. Instead of providing leadership, one may lose control completely, leading to confusion and misalignment in personal or group dynamics. When you want to see the real role of line 6 in gate 21, take into consideration that line 6 is often a transition point where the theme of the gate reaches its final lesson, sometimes stepping into mastery, other times seeing the failure of previous attempts. Here, the lesson is about learning from past mistakes in leadership and control. If power has been applied poorly, it leads to chaos in the tribe and a loss of authority, of resources. So the security of the tribe itself is impacted by chaos and disorder. This line may represent the collapse of old structures, showing that controlling something that cannot be controlled leads to disorder. In this line, poor leadership or misuse of power leads to instability. Trying to force control where it is not effective creates disorder. Understanding when to step back and reassess is crucial to avoiding chaos. The thing to recognize about the nature of the materialism that is inherent in the 21 is that, built into the most materialistic channel, is also anti-materialism, which we already met in the third line. The powerlessness that becomes a lack of will for the material plane because of the ego. That manifests differently. For example, people saying that money is bad, that everybody should share. A good hippie consciousness can come out of the 21.3. The same thing is true for the sixth line. Because sixth lines, in and of themselves, are transitional, they are going to sit above in their aloofness and look out on things. A 21.6 is not very likely to be material, and when they are young, they get involved with it, and they discover that it can be disastrous for them. Chaos, where ineffective action leads to disorder. This is a line where Ra Uru shared his comments. I quote, "The moment that you see a line like that, and you are dealing with a sixth line, you really know that this line is going to spend most of its life judging whether something could be an effective action or not. Well, I don't know if I should really take control because I don't know if it is really going to work, and I don't know if I'll really get what I want to get, and I don't know whether I will be interfered with, and I'll have all these problems." They learn that very early because a 21.6 is like a bull in a china shop. They will go in there, and all of a sudden, everything is flying, and they never go into that shop again after that. Why should I go in there? If I do the wrong thing, everything is going to explode. Another important aspect of this line is that we have to be aware that Pluto exalted is not there. So we are dealing with only the Venus in detriment. Withdrawal and reliance on inner order in a chaotic situation. Where the material direction is chaotic, the ego will withdraw and use its power to find an inner order. About the first sentence of the overview line, withdrawal and reliance on inner order in a chaotic situation, Ra said that this is the greatest fence sitter of all the 6 lines. The 21.6 sits there on that fence, and it does not want to do anything else other than sitting on that fence because it knows that if it steps off that fence, the possibility is that nothing will result of it but chaos. This placement highlights a deep internal response to external chaos, where instead of trying to control an unstable situation, the ego retreats inward to restore balance within itself. This is a Venusian approach, seeking harmony, but in detriment, it may struggle with engaging the external world effectively when faced with disorder. About withdrawal and reliance on inner order in a chaotic situation. When faced with material instability or a loss of external control, rather than fighting the chaos, the individual may step back and detach. This withdrawal is not about giving up, but rather about seeking stability from within before taking further action. It reflects a desire for peace, inner harmony, and reflection rather than engaging in power struggles or trying to force order where none exists. Where the material direction is chaotic, the ego will withdraw and use its power to find an inner order. This suggests that when external circumstances, money, leadership, control, business, relationships become unstable, the ego no longer tries to force control externally. Instead, it redirects its willpower inward, focusing on maintaining emotional and mental balance rather than dominating the external situation. This can be a wise and spiritual response, but if taken to an extreme, it may also lead to avoidance of practical action when needed. There is a lesson, after all, in this line. You may find harmony between inner peace and external responsibility. Also, your inner clarity might be used as a foundation for wiser decision-making in the external world. When people with 21.6 know which is the material path for them, and they are in control of that specific material path, they can be of enormous success. It's a truth that 6 lines have this inherent capacity to be wise and fulfilled. It is like the 59.6, who will have a lot of quick relationships when it is young, and then, later on, they will give up. But if it finds the right relationship, it will display a quality of intimacy that we call soulmate, that can be absolutely beautiful, and it will spend day after day with its partner for the rest of its life. In other words, there is the potential in the 6th line for quite a transition experience, something that is really beyond the capacity of the hexagram. However, this is not a very good age for that, because the 21.6 goes to the 51.1. Ra Uruhu explains in a fascinating way this influence or connection, whatever, between 21.6 looking at 51.1. His assertion is, I quote, "The reality is that the 21 and the 51 are next to each other, so that you have these two very expressive gates of the ego system, one going the material way and one going the initiative and potentially mystical way. When the 21.6 is sitting at its point on its roof and it is staring out, it stares into the 51, which does not have the Pluto exalted. It stares into the 51, in which withdrawal is something that is absolutely necessary after a shock. So, the reality is that this sixth line, which is rooted in withdrawal, is looking for an inner order that is compounded by the fact that it is moving towards withdrawal. In other words, one of the things that happens to a 21.6 in our time is that they want to be 51s. Instead of the 21.6 ending up pursuing the material path, they are going to look for the spiritual way and are trying to find wealth in another way. Many of them end up being spiritual business people and end up making their living by selling inner order. That is always a possibility for them. What we need to know about 21.6 is that the process to find their way is a long one. If they want to be in control of something really valuable in their life, it is going to take time. That is because OS the specific energy of this sixth line that they have to be able to come out in the action. If they can't, it is not worth doing. Their actions have to be correct. Otherwise, there is nothing but chaos. The actions of 21.6 can only be correct if their specific material path is correct. As I said, when people with 21.6 know which is the material path for them, and they are in control of that specific material path, they can be of enormous success. That is because the 21.6 is not just looking to be in control, it has to be in control of the right thing. The fact that it looks inward is actually an advantage because from its point of view, it is there, inwards, to control. If they stay long enough and they watch the movie inward, they might find the material direction that is correct for them. When chaos happens, the direction was not correct. The inner order was not right. The actions were ineffective. We know that Pluto is not operating in this gate in our lifetime, but we might get some insights if we are aware of its exalted value in gate 21, line 6. So, Pluto, exalted, the war of attrition, the continuance of legitimate action in the hope of eventually succeeding despite all odds, and increasing disorder. Where the ego is out of touch, the display of willpower leads to disorder. This placement in human design speaks to a relentless struggle for control and order, even when the external world is in chaos. It suggests determination, persistence, and endurance, but also a potential blind spot, continuing to push forward despite overwhelming resistance or disorder. The war of attrition. A war of attrition means a long, exhausting battle where one side hopes to outlast the other rather than securing a quick victory. In the context of Gate 21, control, willpower, and authority, this suggests a persistent fight to maintain or regain control, even when the odds are stacked against you. The energy here can be unyielding, stubborn, and determined, refusing to give up even when success seems far away. The continuance of legitimate action in the hope of eventually succeeding despite all odds and increasing disorder. There is a sense of righteousness or justification in the pursuit of control, believing that staying the course will eventually lead to victory. However, disorder may continue to grow, and success is not guaranteed, making this a high-risk, high-endurance energy. This could manifest in leadership, business, relationships, or personal struggles where someone keeps pushing forward no matter what, rather than adapting or stepping back. Where the ego is out of touch, the display of willpower leads to disorder. If the person is not self-aware, their persistence can actually cause more chaos rather than creating stability. Mata, the ego may refuse to surrender or adjust, leading to unnecessary power struggles, exhaustion, or further instability. It's a warning that sometimes letting go is more powerful than endlessly fighting to maintain control. Briefly, Pluto in this placement is strong-willed, determined, and persistent, even in the face of great challenges. It is associated with a belief in the rightness of one's actions, leading to prolonged struggles for control. You may push forward stubbornly, even when adaptation or retreat would be wiser. If the ego is too rigid, the need for control creates more disorder instead of fixing it. You may recognize that control is not always the best solution. Sometimes surrendering or adapting brings greater success. Now let's move on to a different perspective to see how the 21st gate sustains or communicates the purpose of life through the crosses of incarnation that are established when the conscious sun is placed within the 21st hexagram. Right angle cross of tension, consisting of following gates 21, 48, 38, 39. Natural boundary setters who like to be in control of their environment and those in it. They can be good at policing or supervising situations. Your cross carries the energy of tension that is necessary to maintain order in a tribal environment. This may play out in family, work, or community, but the tension is a necessary provocation to keep the group aligned and in order. The tension also helps to provoke response, which provides opportunity for more effective leadership. Juxtaposition, cross of control, consisting of following gates 21, 48, 54, 53. People with depth, fixed in fulfilling their ambition, their need to rise up, who demand to be in control so they can innovate by starting something new. Your cross has the energy of needing control. It is through this control that you can take something and recreate it as something new. Everyone has this ability, but not with the strength that you do. With this energy, you can take control of the situation, start anew, and make it what it is really supposed to be. Through your drive to take control, you bring about innovation, which is why you are truly here. Left angle cross of endeavor, consisting of following gates 21, 48, 54, 53. Ambitious agents of change who endeavor to bring together people with depth, who are focused on exploring new horizons in order to develop communal, business, or scientific structures. The energy in your cross is about coming together in a very controlled way to make something bigger happen. You endeavor to make something grand and complex happen from bringing together smaller forces. Tight control is a must, for otherwise you have chaos, which is not what you or this energy is about. I hope this material is helpful and supporting for the development of your human design knowledge. My purpose is to be practical, and this material to give you a useful understanding in your real life. Please share if you enjoyed listening, and subscribe if you want to be notified about any new posting of informative learning materials regarding human design. Thank you.